Hey everybody, Erin from the Impatient Gardener. It's an exciting day because it's time to start doing something about dahlias, not just talking about them, which is fabulous. So it is actually time to start potting up dahlias in my zone. So a couple of notes about this. First of all, we've done tons of dahlia videos, so I'll link to some of them below in case you're interested in other things. This might be a bit of a refresher for you. I garden in Zone 5B. I use a rough frost-free date of mid-May, basically, and I like to start potting up my dahlias about a month before that frost-free date, although I won't plant them out until at least 2 weeks after that frost-free date because you want the soil to be really warm. Before I get into it, I just want to say this. If you're growing dahlias for the first time, you do not need to pot them up ahead of time. The advantage of potting them up ahead of time is that you do get a bit of a head start on your flowers. I think you can maybe say 2 weeks or so is what you'll get flowers ahead of time, although of course that varies for about a billion different variables. The other thing is that one of the main reasons I do it is that I grow my dahlias mostly amongst other garden plants. I don't have just rows and rows and rows of just dahlias. I grow them in my garden as any other plant in my garden. And therefore, it's really helpful for me to have a plant to put in the ground, not just so I see it, but also so that other plants don't grow over it and crowd it out in the process of it actually starting up from the tubers. Now, I have a ton of new tubers coming. I always have more dahlias than I can use, but I did overwinter a lot of tubers. Now, my tubers that I've ordered are not here yet, but it is time to pull my tubers out of storage. I have been checking on my tubers, but I have not looked at them for for at least a month now. So this is a bit of an unearthing. So what we're going to do is we're going to pull out the tubers, and then I'm just going to talk to you briefly about when and how you should maybe think about dividing your tubers if you didn't do that in fall. I like to do mine in spring for a lot of reasons. The primary one is that I find it much easier to see the eyes in spring. I also think they might be overwinter a little bit better if you leave them in clumps. So we're just going to jump right into it. Again, we've done videos on all these things before, and I will talk you through where we go from here next. So you guys, I think you're familiar with my method. I just use this pet bedding in crates to overwinter my tubers, and I'm going to bring the camera in here close so you can see. This is HS date, and I'm going to bring you in close so you can see what this clump looks like. Okay, so this is my first real look at these, and well, first one just broke off right away. So first thing I'm going to note is that when you feel your tubers, ideally you want them to feel kind of like a potato. You can see on this one, see how this is a little shriveled up. That's not optimal, but I'll probably still plant this one. Then you got to sort of get in there, and you can use a pruners, a scissors, you can use whatever you want, but you don't need, I'm just going to go in here with this is a scissors, it's called a Zen port. I'll put a link to it in there. I only bought it because somebody mentioned that it is great for dividing dahlias, so we're going to give that a shot and see. I've been using it for a bunch of other things actually as well this year, but you don't need any of these little hairy roots, and I like to get those out of there just to clean it up. I mean, I don't think it hurts for them to be on, but I like to be able to see sort of what I'm doing, and having those on there, it's distracting. Okay. So now I'm going to see if I can find any eyes on here to show you guys. Okay, so first off, I'll just tell you, do you see this guy? This is sort of a desiccated tuber. I'm going to just take that guy off right there. And this right here, this tuber has been damaged. I actually think there's a chance that was the original tuber, which is also called the mother tuber. I'll probably take that off. To be honest with you guys, I'm not going to divide this clump. I do like growing clumps. I don't feel like once I get this out of here that this is overcrowded, which is the other thing you're sort of worried about. So I got that guy out of there. I could divide this if I needed more plants, but I like the size it is. I don't feel like it's going to be too crowded in there, and I'm not going to divide it. Here's a good one for you. This is Crichton honey. Actually, if you can't see the eye, you're blind, but there's obviously a shoot coming up already. The eyes are usually up at the top of the tubers, almost where it meets the stem, which is called the neck. And with all this stuff on here, it's a little hard to see what's going on there. And there's a, see, I just flipped it over. There's another eye right here as well on the bottom. So I am going to actually try to divide these two clumps. So I always start with sort of a grab and a wiggle. Oh yeah, there we go. It just came right apart. Overall, I'm really happy with how the storage went. Everything feels pretty solid, pretty good. Okay, so there's a nice little clump. And then this one has two eyes. Right there and right there. So that's a nice little plant too. And then I'll see if I can find one more so I can show you how to actually... Okay, so this clump is good to pull out because we should just talk about when storage doesn't go great. This is another HS date. And so I may end up actually dividing that other HS date. But I thought I'd talk through with you how to decide whether you're going to keep something. So I think you can see that these are all quite shriveled. You can see some of them have a lot of give on them. Others are just sort of semi-squishy. So, you know, why does this happen? Oh my gosh, there's so many different reasons it could happen. I was looking for some eyes on here and I don't see it, but I'm not overwhelmed by that because I didn't see any eyes on that one either. You know, some of these are, actually I lied. Here's an eye right here. This is that other clump of HS state. Do you see right there, that little white swelling? So a lot of these are pretty squishy. And so the real squishy ones, I'm going to cut out of here. But I think what we're going to do is I'm going to pot this one up and I'll label it so that we know which one this was. And then we'll see if this works. Because a lot of times these less than perfect tubers actually come through just fine. Okay, this one is HS First Love. And this is a cousin to HS Date. And this is a tuber that's stored very well. So here's a couple of things to note. There's an eye right there. There's another tiny eye right there. These are so much, I mean, they're still hard to see, but they're a lot easier to see now in spring. In fall, I wouldn't have been able to see that at all. So the deal with the mother tubers, you guys, is that the tuber from the year before, the so-called mother tuber, doesn't provide anything in the future. So all it's doing is crowding it out. So you can get that out of there. But I don't know if this is the mother tuber or this is the mother tuber. So I'm not going to remove either one of them because I don't want to take out a tuber that is otherwise viable and good. Another Crichton honey. Eye there, eye there. And I believe there's an eye over here. So I could cut through here like this right there so that that eye and that is there. But you can see how on these stems there appears to be sort of a natural break. And that's where we're going to cut. And then sort of work them apart if you can. Sometimes you have to actually cut some more, but might be able to do this without. There we go. Okay, I lost one of those tubers, but it's not a big deal. Okay, so there we go. We've got eyes there. And then on this one, we've got some eyes up here. And again, if a tuber breaks off up here, it's shot. Throw it away. And then this really hard, gnarly bit right here is definitely the mother tuber. So I'm just going to take that out. Okay, so that's how you divide. But you don't have to divide every time. Okay, now let's get on to potting. Okay, so when I'm potting, this is the same thing I've been doing for ages, you guys. I use my old gallon nursery containers. I use a potting mix that doesn't need anything special, certainly doesn't need fertilizer in it, just pretty cheap. And fill it up. Sometimes you have to sort of bend your clumps to get it in there. I mean, obviously you don't want to like jam them or anything, but if you have to sort of contort them a little, that's okay. You want to aim for the top of the stem here to be about 2 inches below the soil. So it's okay. Remember, that was one that had the little shoot. It's fine to bury that. It will find its way up. And then, as I always remind you to be better than I am about this stuff, make sure you label it. Either use your old label or stick a new one in there, because there is zero way to know what dahlia you have until it starts blooming. Okay, next I'm going to do that HS date that was kind of shriveled up, and we're going to label this one with a special label, and I'm going to say that it was the shriveled up one so that we can come back to that and see if that worked or not. I mean, obviously it's not ideal, but there's no reason to throw it away if it's got a chance. Okay, you see that? I don't know if you can. HS date shriveled is what we're going to call that one. So the part where everyone gets confused is watering. So I will take a hose and just lightly run it over these, just to slightly moisten the soil, because even though this is a newer bag of potting mix, it doesn't feel very moist to me. Just to slightly moisten this. Do not water this like you want to saturate the soil like you might if you were potting something else, because these tubers are very prone to rotting. So you want to make sure that you avoid that. Then the next step for me on these is I just put these in big Rubbermaid bins, stack them up, and I just bring them into my house, anywhere in the house. They don't need light, they just need sort of room temperature warmth. And then I will check on them, and I never water them again at this stage. And then once I see a shoot come out, then I typically move them to my temporary greenhouses outside. If you didn't have something like that, you can fashion sort of a mini greenhouse. Just maybe take one of those big clear storage bins, and you could actually turn that over and make that into a mini greenhouse outside. Make sure you bring them in at night. Or you could also put them under grow lights. But once they sprout, they do need really bright light. And if you don't have that, they're going to start getting really leggy. So that's why you don't want to start these too soon. And especially for me, I don't want to start these too soon, because I do, as soon as they sprout, move them to my outside greenhouse, which is plenty warm during the day, but can get quite cool in the evenings. So I have to always keep an eye on that temperature. It's much easier to manage that, obviously, as we get farther into spring. Okay, so that's sort of a review of sort of early stage dahlia management. Remember, it's not necessary that you pot them up right away. You don't have to do that. You can absolutely plant your tubers into the ground. Just remember, ground has to be warm. Whether you're potting previously growing ones into the ground or you're just planting your tubers directly into the ground, look for soil temperatures around 60 degrees or so. Generally speaking, when it's time to plant your tomatoes, you can usually get your dahlias out at the same time. And it's better if your ground is not soaking wet when you do that. So maybe don't do it right after a rainstorm, because again, prone to rotting. So you just want to avoid anything that's going to cause a rot problem with them. Again, linked below to lots more dahlia videos, but I hope this was helpful as a little bit of a refresher. And we will keep an eye on this shriveled little HS date and everything else. So make sure you don't miss anything. Hit that subscribe button and have a great day in your garden, and we'll see you soon. Bye, everybody.